staying. I know we've had an extended night tonight, so I'm gonna truncate a little bit of what I'm sharing, but I'm really, very, very honored. I mean that, very humbled and honored that you stayed around to hear what's going on with this ministry called The Last Well. And just let me jump right in by sharing a couple of things with you. You may or may not know this, so I'll share it with everybody so we're all on the same page. The Last Well is a ministry that actually started by young adults at Frontline back in 2008, 2009. There were many reasons God put that, that orchestrated this whole thing to come together for this mission with The Last Well. But it really started with a bunch of young adults, hundreds and hundreds of young adults at Frontline who saw Amazing Grace, the movie about William Wilberforce. And that was one of the many things that happened, but that was a main player in this. I had hundreds of young adults that came from Frontline who watched Amazing Grace, this story about William Wilberforce, who used his passion for Christ and his political prowess in the UK many years ago to end the slave trade in the UK. He wanted to go in and be a priest, a Catholic priest, and God had other plans for him, so he went into Parliament, of all things. And using his political prowess, his gifts and talents, and his passion for Jesus, he spent 40 years of his life trying to end the slave trade and make it illegal. And you may not know the story. The minute the gavel went down and slavery was made illegal in the UK, right after that, 72 hours later, William Wilberforce died. So it's one of the greatest examples of a man truly giving his life. We talk about giving our life to the Lord. He gave his life to the Lord, 40 years of it, and then he died 72 hours later. When that movie came out, hundreds of young adults at Frontline came to me as a pastor and said, listen, how come we can't see something end in our generation? How come God's not doing that kind of stuff in our generation where we're seeing these things in the annals of history go down? Why can't we see that? And the simple answer as the pastor was we can. God is looking for surrender and availability. And so out of these young adults, we started asking the question. Actually, there were two questions. What's the greatest need in the world? And what's the worst place in the world? If we're really going to go shine God's glory in a powerful way and end something in this generation, what tool is he going to use and where is he going to go to do it? Okay? And that was the simple two questions. And we came up with this reality that, first of all, the greatest physical need in the world is water. That you can't educate dead children or dying children. You can't even deal with microfinance or crop yields or pig farms or anything else that you might do to help a village in any given area around the world until you provide them water, until they have a safe water resource. And a lot of us don't really understand that in the States, but it's a huge issue almost everywhere else in the world. All right, so water became that great need. And then the worst place. You go, well, Todd, how'd you find out about the worst place? Well, all these young adults at Frontline, we began to look over months and months and months, doing a lot of studies with the UN and USAID and other governmental statistics, ministry statistics with Samaritan's Purse and other large organizations that work around the world. And we found out this, that Liberia is the second poorest country in the world. And the CIA keeps a fact book and names, in that fact book, a misery index, names Liberia the second most miserable place to live in the world. Second poorest, second most miserable. USA Today last summer named it the most corrupt country in the world, and now it's been stricken with Ebola. You've got an incredibly challenging place, and we learned this even back then. This is an area where ministries and organizations and churches and denominations go, where missionaries fly in, and months later they fly out because they're not able to handle the challenges that they have to deal with in Liberia. So in very short order, we came up with this idea that we as young adults would believe God to provide access to clean water to the entire nation of this poverty-stricken, corrupt, misery-ridden place. Border to border, every man, woman, and child, and share the gospel with every single person we serve, and we do it by 2020. You may be asking, well, why? That was like a 12-year project. Well, why would you do it in 2020? Well, what was interesting about the young adults that I talked to, I was in my late 30s, mid-30s, late 30s at the time, and they would all come up to me and go, hey, this has got to be way, well, I remember this like it was yesterday. This has got to be way sooner than that 40-year Wilberforce thing. You know, I'm 25 years old. I won't wait until I'm 65 to see this happen. I can't even wrap my mind around 10 years, let alone 20 or 50 or whatever it is. And so as we prayed through the process, it ended up in a situation where most people could understand, could wrap their minds around the reality of a 12-year project, an 8, 10, 12-year project. And that's really what it became, 2008 to 2020. And the idea was to do something. Now, the interesting thing about this, we have several people that were involved in it at the very early stages know this. You know, nobody knew how it was going to happen. I was just a pastor with a passion to see God take a groundswell of activity and energy and excitement with a bunch of young adults who are just crazy enough to believe God could do something great and profound and otherworldly in this generation, that he really could have a Wilberforce moment for our generation. And those young people needed something. And so the pastor, at the beginning, it wasn't water or education. It didn't matter what the tool was. The gospel was going to be the goal. We need to find a way to get there and earn the right to share the gospel with that community. And water became that tool. And that's how this all began. It began with young adults at Frontline, McLean Bible Church, who had a passion to see something in their generation. And out of that, there's been so many incredible things that have birthed from it, and that's what I hope to share with you in the short time we have tonight. I'm going to pass through a whole lot of these slides. There's Wilberforce. We talked about the greatest need is water. There's one children that dies every 30 seconds around the world. I don't know if you knew that before, but in the time we spend 20 minutes together today, that's 40 children that have died because of a lack of access to safe drinking water. This is what I want to spend a little bit of time on. Everything comes back to water. So if we're looking to show God's love in a practical way, if we're looking to share Jesus in a way that people can receive it, one of the greatest opportunities I believe God's going to be using, because he certainly is in Liberia, but I think this is going to expand to many other countries over time, even if we're not personally involved in the ministry, and I'll explain why we may or may not be. We're called to Liberia to finish that country. We've asked God many times, can we go somewhere else in 2021? He hasn't said a word. He said, look, bite down like a pit bull on this, put blinders on, you focus on this and only this. And that's what we're doing. But poverty, health, education, women, everything comes back to water. We look at this time and time again. You can talk about all sorts of topics and issues and a way to develop a country or a segment of a country, a city, a village, whatever. Poverty is pervasive where there's no water. It cannot change. They are inescapably tied. The health issues are obviously huge. Education, again, like I said before, you can't educate dead or dying children, but the other issue is the children are the ones that go get the water. They get up every morning, they go for 8 hours back and forth to get water, dirty water, back to their families. They don't have time for education or hope for a future at all. They're surviving by collecting dirty water daily. And then women, health, safety, not just women, but girls. Overarchingly, by the vast majority, it's women and girls who are going to get the water. If someone goes and gets an education within a given village or community, it's usually the sons. It's a very, very big issue with women. And one of the biggest things that I've had trouble with, and that we as when the young adults started this 6 years ago, was trying to help people understand what the real issue is with water. Because you can talk about it, you can hear about it, you can watch a documentary about those people halfway around the world. But what if we were to do something, what if we were to show something visually that helped people understand what the water situation in Liberia looks like if it was in the States? So this video actually started as a dream 6 years ago. We made it about a year back. But about 6 years ago, when these young adults were talking, it's like, why can't we bring the story of the Liberian water problem into a family in America? What would that look like? And I want you to see this, and when you watch this, think about this. Husbands off doing something else, whatever that might be. The sons go off to school in some of these circumstances. Again, it's the wives, and most often, it's the daughters. Now, I'm a father of a son and 2 daughters, and looks very much like this family. This isn't my actual family. These are actors and fill-ins, because none of my family would get in front of a camera. So it's me and a bunch of fake people. But the story's real, and this is exactly what people deal with on a daily basis. people in America, everyday life in Liberia. Actually, one of those was my daughter, the very little tiny one. It all comes back to that. So I want you to imagine this for a minute. If that really is the issue, if that really is the challenge, and children are dying, and they're dying at alarming rates, not just in Liberia, but around the world, just because of lack of safe drinking water. If that really is the issue, can you imagine? Can you imagine for a moment, if we bring families, which we have and will continue to do until this country's reached, if we bring these families clean water and their children no longer die, and the villages are no longer having to bury those children on a regular basis. There was just a village that we were involved with. We just provided clean water, but it was after 8 children died. 8 children died from a cholera outbreak just in that village in a matter of 3 months. If we bring water to those kinds of villages, they are so open, they are so astonished when we say that God has sent us halfway around the world to serve you by giving you this free gift. It's not from us, it is for you from Him. And we have Liberian preachers and Liberian evangelists speaking to these villages and speaking within that culture, understanding who they're dealing with, living within that structure, sharing the love of Christ in a profound and powerful and receivable way, because that water's been brought. It's an amazing thing to watch. If you guys know me, you know that I've always had a passion for evangelism. This is a radical shift for me to go from pastor to this role, but it fits me like a glove. Because it's all about sharing Christ. It's all about seeing people come to faith after we've earned the right to share the gospel with them. I'll give you a great story. There are hundreds. This one's hit me the most in the recent months. Pastor Peter Flomo, one of our pastors that works with us, he's actually on our staff over in Liberia here at Glasgow now. Pastor Peter told a story just recently because I was asking him for some updates. I was over in Liberia 7 weeks ago. And we were sitting there talking, and he said, listen, he goes, we've got a really, really cool thing going on in the northern region of Bong County. He goes, we've got all these people up there, and there's one of the few areas where it's very predominant Muslim. There's actually a lot of animist and syncretistic religions within Liberia. There's some Christians, and then there's obviously a Muslim influence in there, but it's very small compared to other countries around it. Well, in this area, one of the imams came in this small group of villages where water was being brought in by our ministry. And he came up to Pastor Peter and he said, Peter, are my people, the Muslims, going to be able to drink from the well? And Peter said, yes, it's for everybody. It's a free gift. It's for everyone, regardless of their religious background. We just want everyone to know, and we're going to tell them when they come, that it's Christ that brought this to this village. And he said, that's fine. And so he walked away, and he tells later, Peter, that he tested him. 2 days later, after the well had been dedicated, the gospel had been preached, people had come to faith in Christ, he sent his 2 daughters, this Muslim imam sent his 2 daughters over to the well to see if, in fact, they would not be accosted and sent away. And the daughters came over, and they took from the well. Nobody accosted them. Nobody said anything. It was a very kind and uneventful process. And they took the water back to the imam's house. And the imam asked him what's going on. He said, the daughter said nothing. There was nothing happening. So he sent him back another day. And all through this process, so several days later, the imam comes back to Peter and says, Peter, what's the deal that you're giving free water? I really thought you were lying to me because, see, he knows and Peter knows, the imam knows and our pastor knows that Muslims come into a country like Liberia, and when they provide water or education, they only provide that water and education to converts. So you have to convert to Islam to be able to drink from the water. So they force that on them and say, if you want to live, if you want to drink this clean water, you have to become Muslim. And the imam was shocked that we didn't lie about what we said we were going to do. And he began to ask Peter of this Jesus that would give free water to the Muslims. That imam, against all odds, only God could do this, gave his life to Jesus, renounced his position, began to guide people in his mosque over to the well to hear Peter. Days later, his daughters, his household, became followers of Jesus. That's what's happening. That's one of many stories that are out there because God has sovereignly moved in the hearts of young adults 6.5 years ago to bring about this change in Liberia. So, we talked about the greatest need, the place, all the challenges, second poorest country, second most miserable. This is one thing I want you to see. This is a unique opportunity for us who decide to get involved with this in some way. There are about 4 million people in this country. The median age is 18. Think about that for just a minute. The median age in the country is 18. Almost half of the people, 43%, are under the age of 15. Well over 50% are under the age of 18. It is the only nation that is commonly called this among UN and missionary agencies, etc., a nation of children. It is the nation of children. Why? Because of a 14-year civil war from 1990 to 2004 killed 250,000 people. You've got 5% over the age of 65. This is an incredible opportunity for us to share Christ with a new and young generation that could be risen up within this country to transform not just Liberia for Christ, but the region for Christ. I'll skip that. Here we go. Let me just give you a couple of these because I think this is interesting. And we'll bring it all out. 250,000 people died from the Civil War, 14 years from 1990 to 2004. After the Civil War, over the last 11 years since the Civil War, 300,000 people have died in Liberia from waterborne illness. More have died from water than war. Let me just say that again. More have died from water than war. You guys know about Ebola. I'm sure you've kept up with this, especially in the D.C. area. Liberia was the epicenter of Ebola. More people by far have died in Liberia than anywhere else. In fact, I believe the statistic is correct. The number of people that have died in Liberia alone match or exceed all of the people that died in all 24 outbreaks over the last quarter century. Just in the country of Liberia, a total of 10,000 deaths in 3 countries, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. That's as of March, as of this month. It was actually Thursday of last week. That was the latest figure. I want you to see this. Up to 100 people die a day from waterborne illness in Liberia alone. So Ebola's gotten international attention. Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars have gone into that area to try to deal with Ebola, as it should. That is exactly what should have happened. However, if you multiply these numbers, every 100 days, right? 100 divided into 10,000. Every 100 days, the equivalent of the worst Ebola outbreak in history, those number of deaths, happens every single 100 days in Liberia. Every 3 months, a whole another 10,000 people. Nobody saw it. What better way do we not only show God's love to these people, but express the need and the challenge of this to the world? So this is what it all came down to. And this is what these young adults 6 years ago came to. The place was going to be Liberia. The tool would always be the water, but the goal was always going to be the gospel. That was the way we were going to earn our right. Sharing water, sharing that practical need would get us the right to share the gospel with them. And like that imam and his 2 daughters, they'd come to faith in Christ. I'm going through all these. We'll talk about those later. Let me sit down if you want to talk more about it. This is what I want to bless you with. If you were involved in Frontline 6 years ago, especially, if you were involved with this ministry early on, many people last year, by the way, asked me, they go, I thought you guys would have had to stop operations because of Ebola, you know? And you're going to see some things that I think will give you a very warm feeling in your heart about what God really does in the midst of crisis. But look at this. 1.8 million people lacked access to clean water in 2008 when this all started. As of this month, it's right at 900,000 still needed. Okay, that's a lot of people that now have access to clean water. When you look at those numbers, the numbers of people, we've done 1,000 projects by God's grace since this started with Frontliners 6.5 years ago. But this is what I want you to see right there. 416 of those. 40% of all the projects ever done in the history of this ministry over 6.5 years were done during Ebola last year. That's amazing, right? Listen, you would not believe the number of people that have come to faith through the crisis of Ebola and us leaning into the issue and providing that clean water. So in the misery and the challenge and the loss of Ebola, God has redeemed that and allowed us to share and to reach people in an aggressive way. It was the first year last year we reached over 250,000 people with the gospel. 250,000 people were reached with the gospel in the midst of Ebola. And we have over 400 scheduled this year. That's how many people we've been blessed to reach. Since this started as a dream among young adults to say, how come we can't see God finish something in our generation? 803,000 people. How do we do it? Well, this is what I think is probably most exciting for me. You know, there are a lot of Christian organizations that start out gospel-centered. You guys know what I'm talking about, a lot of you, I'm sure, especially, again, in D.C., a lot of you are involved in organizations. Organizations will start out as Christian organizations doing humanitarian aid to show God's love in a practical way, but they're gospel-centered, just like we've proclaimed that we are, right? But over time, years and years and even decades, over time, the gospel fades out of existence and they become once Christian, still humanitarian organizations. The gospel bleeds off the primacy of focus, and the humanitarian aid becomes the centerpiece. It happens over and over and over and over again. By God's grace, that will never be the case with us. We're about sharing the gospel. We are an evangelistic organization that uses water as a tool, not a humanitarian organization that tells people about Jesus, and there's a big difference. Okay? And that's why we're excited about this three-tier strategy, right? We're about church planting and evangelism. The drillers will allow us the entryway, the opportunity to go in there by providing year-round water sources, clean water sources, for up to 600 people per project. In doing that, we build relationships with people and earn our way into that relationship and that opportunity. This is something we didn't have when we started, so if you began this and knew about this back in 2008-9, I've had questions for years now. When do you know you're done? And how can you possibly know you're finished with a country? Especially, there's no census, it's Liberia, it's a developing country, they've been through civil war, people don't know when they were born, right? I mean, there's all sorts of challenges with that. Well, what we've done is we started going district by district, village by village, hut by hut, over the last 2 years specifically, across the country, and this is our goal. Everybody in that country, and this is to give honor to God, everybody in that country will be in a 15-minute walk of clean water. No more hour, 2 hour, 5, 7, 8 hour round trips, 15-minute walk maximum, no more than 600 people per water source. One of the biggest challenges out there that I've found as I've learned about this water issue is that a lot of people, the UN will go in and put a well in a village of 2,000 people and go, everybody's got water, it's within 4 feet of you. The problem is 2,000 people can't get served with a well. Sounds great from the outside, but it's not serving the vast majority of the people in the village. If there's 2,000 people in a village, we do 3 wells, 4 wells, whatever it takes to get us there, okay? And then finally, and most importantly, the gospel is preached in a receivable way in every single village that we serve. Then, when that's done, we know that everybody's been reached and that the nation has been finished, and God will get the glory. This is really what's left. 2,500 projects needed in 68 months. That's going to require us to do just over 400 projects a year, which is the first time last year we ramped up to that, and we got to continue that through 2020. It's about $3 million, 1 million people left to reach. It's actually just under that, so those are approximations. But what's amazing about this is the total cost involved in this is somewhere between, when it's all over, $10 or $15 million. Now that may sound like a lot, but I want you to think about this. There is a 1.5 miles, I believe it's right, 1.5 miles pipeline that's being done in Monrovia, the capital city of Liberia. Okay, 1.5 mile pipeline just below the ground, and it's going to provide for somewhere between 50 and 100,000 people clean water, $16.5 million. Let me say that one more time, because I don't think anybody caught that. $16.5 million, 1.5 mile pipeline, 50 to 100,000 people. We're going to reach the entire nation for less than that. It's called using our funds wisely and honoring God in the process. Okay? So when this mission is completed, Liberia is going to be the first developing country to have universal access to clean water for every citizen. God's going to get all the glory. And that's, and again, this is very quick. I've been quick because you guys are tired and it's been a long time. But this is what it comes down to for us. And I'm unapologetic about this because this is no longer a hope so. God has given a strategy, a structure, and a process to finish those 2,500 projects by 2020. It is not if, it is when. It's either 2020 or earlier. And all of it is built around when the funds come in. That was not the case 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. It is the case today. If you know somebody that's got a $3 million check and can write it tomorrow, tell them to write it to the last well. We're going to go over and finish this thing and get it done.
Amen.
I'm serious about that. Now, nobody's raised their hand so far, so let's talk about some other ways to help. One of the most amazing things I think when I tell people this is that first thing to do, right, is to pray for us. We diligently, right now, because we're in a very, very important stage where we've ramped up production from 200 projects a year over the 2 years before 14 to over 400 last year in the midst of Ebola. So we doubled in a year. And it was a huge and monumental shift, and that's where we need to be each year. So please pray for us. Pray for our church planners, our evangelists, our drillers, because they are at their full force. They are at capacity. They're doing everything they can. We're doing over 1 project a day, if you think about it. We used to do 1 project every 3 weeks when we started. Now we're doing over a project a day. Sharing the gospel, over a project a day. Church planning, over a project a day. So when we do this, one of the things that we've asked people to think about is, number 1, pray. Number 2, people go, well, how much does it cost for a well? Well, we've got a matching grant in place right now. I'm down at Liberty University all week, and I'm coming back and forth to D.C. for some opportunities that I've been called about, including this one, which is my favorite so far. Anytime y'all want me back, just tell Nate. Or Lon, or both. Email them tomorrow. Where was I? Oh yeah, wells. So with the matching grant, $1,500 is enough with our matching grants to actually provide a well for 600 people. Half of those are children. Okay? Now think about that. 600 people, half of those are children, and it's $1,500 with our matching grant structure in place. There's a max on that matching grant, but it's extremely high. We are nowhere close to that. We can use a lot of people giving so that we can get that matching grant in place. People have asked me, what's the easiest way to do it? Well, think about this. $30 a month for 50 months, that's $1,500. Or $60 a month for 25 months. I don't care how you do it. But every one of us, I want us to pray about this and think, could I transform a village? This is where we're getting to at this point. We need 2,500 people to agree to support a village. 2,500 people to agree to transform the lives of one village with water and the gospel. Now, we can do it in any way, shape, or form, right? You can do it at once or in monthly, or you can go out there and give up your birthday presents. We have a website now where you can go and create a fundraising page and tell people you're going to give up your birthday presents and have them send money to Last Well. All sorts of opportunities on the lastwell.org. But I want you to think about this. Did you already pass everything out?
No.
Oh,
No.
really?
Just the newsletter. Just newsletter sign up. Yeah.
What?
Newsletter sign up, emails.
Oh, yeah. Well, real quick, because we're almost done. Everybody's tired. Let's throw a bunch of these out. They're going to pass you out. I thought they were already there. Okay, so we're going to pass you out a brochure, just a fold-out insert that's got information on what we talked about tonight. Because here's the most important thing tonight. If you can give us your email so we can keep you up to date so you can be praying for us. But if you're interested in talking about sponsoring a well, there's a commitment card in there. And I'd like you to pray and think about that, whether it's tonight or sometime down the road. We need these things. This is not, thinking about what might this happen or could it be done or I wonder if it can happen. The numbers are clear and everything's in front of us for the first time in the history of this ministry. And we're just asking people to pray about helping us to transform this nation for God's glory. So will you do that? Yeah? Okay. So let me do this. I'm going to take about 2 minutes for one or two questions you might have. I went through a lot very quickly, and I know you guys have given me some time. I appreciate that. Any questions that you guys have about what we've talked about so far? Nothing?
How do you want that $3 million? PayPal?
You know what? You go to thelastwell.org. That's one way to do it. Go to thelastwell.org and you just go and click donate, and they got a monthly button on there. It's real simple. It's all internal with our website at thelastwell.org. And if you got questions about how to give up your birthday or do some kind of a fundraising opportunity like that, you want to get engaged that way, you go to thelastwell.org and you can find out about their work there too. What other questions? Nothing? Thank you very much. So, as of 6 years ago, we had a DC chapter, but it wasn't called a DC chapter because it was just DC people. It was Frontline, right? And so when I moved to Dallas 4 years ago this month, as a matter of fact, when I moved down to Dallas back in 2011, the board moved down there and everything kind of transitioned down there, and we went through a big time of transition. It was actually our most challenging year when we were just questioning the survival of the ministry, and God obviously has provided in spades. But during that transition, we've been trying to get things going back with the DC chapter, because here's my passion. This thing started with young adults. I want it to end with young adults. That's the thing I pray about all the time. It started with young adults. We want it to end with young adults. Okay? And not that I'm going to say no to a $3 million check, but I'd rather see 2,500 people, right, give a smaller amount than that and commit to transforming villages. That's my passion. Okay? So the DC chapter has now come up as of October when I did the fall retreat from McLean Bible Church, and several of you were obviously there. That was my favorite weekend I can remember. So thank you for that, by the way. But the DC chapter kind of reignited at the fall retreat in October. And so Ben, right over there, raise your hand, Ben, right there. Chris, Dominic, right over there, raise your hand, Chris. They're handing stuff out. They're kind of heading up and kind of co-leading the DC chapter. And so there's gatherings. We're going to do quarterly gatherings. I just had a dinner on Saturday night with the crew, and we're trying to get more people engaged and think of more creative ways to do this. And I'm going to be coming up to DC and visiting and spending time with the DC chapter as we move forward, because again, if it could all happen back in DC, I don't even know what I'd do with myself. I'd be so fired up, I just can't. Because that's what I'm praying for. I'm praying for young adults in DC to finish this deal. So be thinking about that. So if you need to talk to Ben or Chris about the DC chapter, let them know you want to be involved in some way. And get involved with the quarterly meetings. And I'll be coming up here about every 6 months, every 2 quarterly meetings. Just got done with one, I'll come up 6 months more. But above all, be praying for us. And please, 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 share this with people. Will you? Just share it with people. Say, listen, man, and if you believe this, now I've never seen anything like this. God's done some amazing stuff. Let me tell you the story. Cool? Any other questions? Yeah.
How are you working with indigenous ministries and indigenous churches?
Yeah, everything is through indigenous ministries and indigenous churches. We're working with everything from evangelistic teams like the Christian Revival Church Association, CRCA, which is an evangelistic and church planting Liberian group. And we work with them and partner them with the drilling team, so they go out there and they're the ones that preach the gospels and plant the churches. That answer your question? Yeah, we're not doing anything. They don't see white people doing anything. They see Liberians, their fellow Liberians doing it all. Anything else? Cool. Listen, I want to thank you more than you can possibly know. I'm going to close this in prayer and let you go. If you want to sponsor a well and you know you want to do that, will you come talk to me or bring you a little commitment card and I'll call you tomorrow or we'll get everything started. And the last thing I will tell you though, that's I hope an encouragement to you, when we started this, we were tired of seeing ministries that were just black holes and you never knew where your money went or what happened to it. 100% of the operations costs of this ministry are covered by a small group of men in Dallas, donors. Salaries, travel, computer, everything. All of it is covered 100% by a small group of donors. We stay real light. We got a skeleton crew. 100% of your monies go to the ground in the gospel in Liberia. Period, end of story. So you don't have any question about my integrity, the integrity of the organization. All that's covered. Everybody in the money goes to Liberia. That's what we want you to see and hear and understand. That's a commitment from us to you. Okay? So as you're giving funds into this, just know that's the deal. I think that's what I was talking about. I had something else in my head. Okay. Yeah, but if you want to sponsor well, talk to me so you know that the money's going exactly where it needs to go. Anything else?
It's double.
Huh?
Every single dollar that we're spending matches too.
Yeah, every single dollar's matched, 100%. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it has been.
And it has been. Yeah, yeah, since the beginning of this thing, we've had matching grants structured. Now we're getting to the point where we're kind of tapping them out, which is a great problem to have. I'll go find my money. I'm kidding. You're sure of that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's $10,000 that's acting as a matching grant for any of the money raised tonight. So I changed my mind. If you want to give tonight if you can. Think about that. Can we do this? If they get on a credit card and draft and agree to do the monthly and agree to do a whole well, will we match it with that, or does the guy have to have the... All right, so
just commitment. We make a commitment tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a commitment tonight. You do it. Let us know what that is, and we'll get matching grants and proof for that. Oh, that was the deal. Every single well, you get an 8-page full-color summary report before and after pictures of the project, the village, the number of people reached, the GPS coordinates, and we have a map on our website to show exactly where your project is. And so when you do a well, you get that report. Nobody else gets that report. Nobody. It's yours. And that's not to give you glory, it's to give God and for you to be blessed. All right, thank you very much. Let me close in prayer. Father, thank you for our time. Thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for allowing me the time to be on this stage, and thank you for loving us enough to save